Okay, so we're going to do part 6 of project 2, uh, which shows you duration and convexity, and this is going to show you why every time yields change you have to recalculate your duration. Okay, so you're going to move or copy sheet to make a copy of sheet 2, moving it to the end, create a copy. I'm going to rename this part 6. And the reason I'm using part 2 instead of part 1 is that I want to use a different chart. You could use part 1, you just have to change the chart. I'm going to delete the graph. I'm going to leave the price change even though I'm not going to use it, but I left it in my example here, so I'm going to leave it. And I'm going to change this to 30 because 30-year bond has more convexity, which I'll show you in a little bit when we do this. Okay. We're going to need to replace the yields with actual numbers. And the reason for that is Excel has some kind of weird thing when it does lookup functions, and I'm not really sure why, but sometimes if you're using a lookup function, once you know what it is, and it won't work, check and see if it's because it needs to have values in here instead of formulas. It needs to be looking at a table with values instead of formulas. And so I've just replaced all of these with numbers. So I typed the numbers in. It's not that hard, but it's kind of annoying to have to do it. Okay, so I'm going to make D a little bit narrower so I can see everything. All right, so the next part says graph this bond that's in here with the same way that I graphed in part 1, except that instead of using a line chart, I'm going to use a scatter plot that's going to look like this. So it's this one with the smooth lines, and I don't like all the dots. It looks kind of funny when you put all the dots, so I don't want to put all the dots. So I'm going to move it over here so I can kind of do everything else I need to do. Okay, and I'm going to use, again, select data, but notice that this, when I added a series, it looks a little different because it not only has y values, but also has x values. And I'm going to call this bond price, and for the x values, I'm going to use the yields, and for the y values, I'm going to use the prices. So it's going to look the same as the chart that I did in part 1, but instead of being a line chart, it's a scatter plot. And there's a reason for that. Another thing that I'm going to do, and I'm not going to, well, I need to label my axes. I didn't put it on here, but I want to click on this axis, right click, do Format Axis, and then I'm going to change the minimum here to -1000, and the maximum I'm going to put 3700, just because of the way it's going to graph later. Then I'm going to click on this arrow and put Close. And then I'm going to do over here, it looks kind of funny that I've got it looks kind of funny that this axis goes up to 25% when I don't have any data that's 25%. So I'm going to take that 5 off and put that maximum at 20%, so that I use the whole graph. Okay, and then I want to do my axis labels. And I'm going to call this one YTM, like we always do. We always do our axis labels. And I'm going to call this one price. Okay, and then you can see if I change the years to maturity, let me bring this graph over so you can look at both at the same time. If I change the years to maturity to 15, it's flatter. So I want a more convex bond because I want to illustrate something more interesting, and so I'm going to leave it there. I'm not sure why it's at 35. Let me see if I did that right. said 3,700. I'm going to change it to 4,000 just to make sure I've got all my prices. So make it from negative 1,000 to positive 4,000. Okay, and I'm going to move this back. So I've got it where I need to have it to look at it. Okay, but I've got enough space to do a couple of things. Okay, so I'm going to insert 2 rows where my bond data is, because to calculate, I can insert rows this way, but I'm going to be messing with all this over here. I don't want to do that. I'm going to do it here. Right click, insert, shift cells down, OK. And I'm going to put settlement date and maturity date, because I need those if I'm going to calculate modified duration. So pick any 2 dates that are 30 years apart. I picked kind of the most obvious ones. And I'm going to use all the data over here to calculate modified duration at each of these levels of yield. So I'm going to type in the title, modified duration, and I want to wrap text. So I'm going to type in M duration. Oops. And the settlement date is going to be here. I want to anchor that. I'm going to anchor almost everything in this formula. I'm going to anchor the maturity date. So I'm going to absolute reference it. I'm going to absolute reference the coupon divided by the number of coupon payments per year. Again, absolute referenced. The yield is going to be this one, so the one in the column, not the one over here. And so I'm not going to absolute reference that. I'm going to relative reference that. And that's going to be divided by the number of coupon payments per year. Again, absolute referenced. And my frequency is semi-annual. So, but I want that to be referenced to this. And again, F4. And that's the modified duration. And if I've done it right, it will double click and go all the way down and cell reference the right cells. And it appears to be doing that. Okay, I'm just making sure my audio is still on, because it was kind of surprising. I recorded a 20-minute video with no audio. Okay, so I've got that. Now I'm going to make a column next to the price column in which I've already done that, sorry. I've done number 28. Now I'm going to do number 29. This is kind of fun. So we're going to make sure that we have a developer tab. I've already got it, but I'm going to show you how I put it in there. I did File, Options, Customize Ribbon, and over here, if this is not clicked, click it, and you'll have a developer tab. So on the developer tab, I want to insert this little thing that looks like an up-down arrow. I'm calling that a spinner. Okay, and I also want to, on the developer tab, click on properties, and under control, form control, I want to make the current value 1, the minimum value, I can make that 0, but I chose to make it 1, and I told you 1, so we'll make it 1, and the maximum value is going to be 20. Incremental change will be 1, and the cell link, I'm just going to put it right here. So just some cell right next to your spinner somewhere. Okay, so what you'll see is that when you click out of that form, you'll see that when you push the up arrow, it increments, and when you push the down arrow, it decrements by what I told it to increment by, which is 1. Starting at 1 and going all the way to 20. When it gets to 20, it stops. And when it gets back down to 1, it stops. So that's what I have.